What is up? Good afternoon, East Coast. Good morning, West Coast. We are back. Episode 90 of Football Life presents the Audible. I am your host, Randy Hammond, in a cold upstate New York setting, joined by someone who's probably perfectly comfortable in the atmosphere and the temperature that he's at over there in Arizona. Matt Bushnell, good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Randy. I would say it's a little cold here, but that'd be kind of like it was cold last week, I'll admit, for Arizona, but now we're hitting the 70s. We hit 74 yesterday, so we're getting a little better.
Yeah, we are months away from 74 degrees here in upstate New York. I believe it is a mild 4 degrees up here right now. So the single digits, probably not getting out of that anytime soon. And Matt, you know what? We did it. This is the regular season is fully in the books. The playoffs are upon us. And boy, oh boy, it was quite the week 18, a first ever week 18. And really, there were just 3 playoff spots for grabs. The rest of the games were seeding based. There were truly only 2 games that meant nothing to anybody. And those involved our teams, of course. So go figure. So we're not going to talk about all the games like we typically do on our Tuesday recap show. We're going to talk about the 4 games that directly impacted the playoffs the most. And we're going to start with Sunday Night Football, and it is the AFC West.
Hold on. Randy, you forgot the top of the show, episode 90.
Sorry, episode 90. You're right. To get us going in here, number 90. Hey, we're in the 90s now. These are great pass rush numbers, defensive linemen, linebackers. So 90 is a good number, Matt Bushnell. I'm sure you got a good one for us.
Absolutely. Sure. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. An impact player, Julius Peppers.
Oh, man. Love him. Oh, man. So good. Just to stick with the Giants, I will go Jason Pierre-Paul, 2-time Super Bowl champion. Obviously is coming off his championship with the Bucs and in the playoffs now. And then I'll say it now, as it's a little foreshadowing for the show, because we're going to give out some regular season awards. The 2021 NFL Defensive Player of the Year, T.J. Watt.
Yeah,
there you go. Number 90. Now we're going to get into it, Matt Bushnell. Sorry for jumping the gun there. I get excited. It's just so much fun to talk about because this game was unreal almost. Like, it's just hard to believe the circumstances we found ourselves in come Sunday Night Football. Here's the deal. Winning in for both of these teams, but you had the added element of things that happened beforehand that if these 2 teams tied, they would both make the postseason. Here we are in overtime, 32-32, the clock ticking down. And then it was admitted after the fact the Raiders were going to let the clock expire. I mean, take that for what you will. And then Brandon Staley, the head coach of the Chargers, calls a timeout to get his defense situated. It appears to be the change in thought process for the Raiders. They bring on Daniel Carlson, who kicked 5 field goals in this game, including the game winner in overtime to send the Las Vegas Raiders into the playoffs as a wild card. This whole game was bonkers. Justin Herbert is unreal. Derek Carr, everyone was playing for their seasons, and it showed. I loved this game. Love that they put it on primetime right where it needed to be. But some questionable decisions at the end there, Matt. But do you really criticize Staley there? Because I think in his mind, he was like, let's get my defense settled and let's not win that way. I kind of get his argument, but at the same time, you had a chance at the postseason too.
I have a lot of issues with Staley in this game, period. Going forward on 4th down inside your own 30, I don't care what down it is. Like, I get the ultra, aggressive nature, and that's who he's been all year, but that's dumb. You gave the Raiders 3 points right there. I think they actually scored a touchdown on that drive, but maybe it was a field goal. I cannot, for the life of me, just understand the thought process behind that. It's hard when you take a look at it. Done the timeout to end the game in overtime. Why? You don't have the right personnel. That's fine. I don't think the Raiders were trying to get the field goal personnel on the field at that time. And then, it's take Bisaccia for his word, or Carr, who said that, they were okay with ending in a tie because they wanted to go to the playoffs.
Right.
To me, though, what I have to tip my hat to the collective calmness of Justin Herbert on that final drive. They had 4th and 10 3 times and converted all 3 times. They converted 4th down 6 times on that final drive, which is just an absurd number. When it's 4th and 10, or I think it was 4th and 10 or something like that, and they scored the touchdown to force overtime. That was bonkers because that wasn't an easy throw, and Herbert just threaded the needle. So when you look at quarterbacks and you see the echelon, the AFC West is loaded. If the Broncos can somehow get Deshaun Watson, holy hell, that is the mecca of quarterbacks in that division, where Derek Carr might be the worst one, and he would be the best one in a lot of other divisions.
Yeah.
It's just nuts. And to me, this game is everything that the NFL could have hoped for and more. It was so great. And to me, and I'm just going to, I know we're going to go over it a little bit later, but you cannot fire Rich Bisaccia. You cannot do it. What he has done with this Raiders team, and when we get to our award segment, I have a little bit of a shock in there, but this guy has earned everything, and no one can dispute that he should come back. He has earned this head coaching position. You want to try out? You want to see what you have in the building? This guy's the goods.
You're right, man. I agree. The team's clearly rallied around him. I think Derek Carr has a ton to do with that as well. I think the leadership at the quarterback position is everything, and especially for the Raiders. I can't imagine where they would be without Carr. His numbers in this game don't exactly do it justice. He's just 20 of 36 for 186 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the 1 touchdown to Renfro in the first quarter really kind of established what was going to go on here. And then I thought they did a great job of mixing run and pass because they had 26 carries for Josh Jacobs alone, who had 132 yards on the ground. The Chiefs, the Chargers defense, man, just they could not get a single stop in this game, and Herbert needed to be everything that he was, and honestly, probably better. The 1 turnover probably was the difference, but the Staley thing is interesting because I appreciate his mindset to continuously go for it on those 4th downs because I appreciate aggressiveness because I have a head coach on my team who preaches it and doesn't actually follow through with it. So I appreciate that. But at the same time, to not understand that situation, because the Raiders truly had nothing to lose in that spot.
Nothing.
So they could run the ball, and if they're not close enough, okay, tie game, whatever, we're in the playoffs regardless. Now, do you want your rival in the division to make the playoffs in the Chargers? I mean, are they really that big of rivals? That's the other conversation that we can have here. They go back a long ways. The Chargers have lost to the Raiders on several occasions in the postseason. So I would have just not helped my rival in that case. But if you believe the Raiders side of things, the Chargers had a playoff spot locked up. And then we wouldn't have had to watch the garbage Steelers we're going to talk about in a second. But that's my frustration with the whole thing is that they had a chance and they sort of got in their own way more than anything. And that bothers me. And Herbert's, I don't know if you saw it on the sideline, Herbert clearly mouthed, I never wanted to tie so bad in my life. Yeah. I think he was speaking for all of America at that point in time. We all wanted to tie because maybe not the NFL. I don't know how they would feel about their last regular season game ending in a tie, but it would have been fun to make fun of Steelers fans at the very least.
Well, and Henry, who's under the moniker of Life Group Difference, says they would have gotten the Chiefs, the Raiders. Yes. And that's why my biggest winner of the weekend is the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, you get the dilapidated Pittsburgh Steelers, which that game's going to be brutal to watch. But just to talk about the Chargers for a second, Randy, the schematics of their defense was really interesting in this game because you could tell they were so worried about Josh Jacobs. And I'll say this, that's the best Josh Jacobs has looked since his rookie year. Yep. I mean, if this is the Josh Jacobs that is going to play against, that I'm drawing a blank here. It's not, God. All right, so we got Pats, Bills. I know we got Steelers versus Chiefs. Who won the other division?
In the AFC, the Titans.
And no, it's the Titans, Chiefs, Bills, and I'm forgetting a division winner. Oh, the Bengals. So we get Raiders Bengals, which is going to be a hell of a matchup, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And if Josh Jacobs plays the way he did that, against the Chargers, against the Bengals, that's going to be a really good matchup. But to me, when you watch the Chargers defense, they wanted to play back with the safeties, but they couldn't. They had to bring everybody up within 10 yards. And that really opened up the passing game. If the Raiders just had a deep threat, And I know people may say Deshaun Jackson or, you know, a couple of other names. They don't have that true number one wide receiver now on their team. Darren Waller, you know, kind of looked like a shell of himself a little bit. So he needs to knock off a lot of that rust. But if they get a guy that can really stretch those defenses and you get Josh Jacobs running, you know, the Chargers experienced half of that equation with Josh Jacobs, which caused them to be gashed by Hunter Renfrow and a lot of those deeper passes to get behind the safeties. And Collinsworth brought up a good point. If the Raiders ever just pulled a double move in that game, the Chargers were toast. It was going to the house for 6.
Yep.
And they just were never able to pull that off. They never called play action. So to me, I'm looking forward to it. You know, Staley's going to have to answer a lot of questions. I think the Chiefs game is a game that you have to circle and you have to ask some questions about that one. You need to ask some questions about this one. You don't want to take away the 4th down aggressiveness when it makes sense. But like Corey pointed to, like, he's just going analytical based. Football doesn't lend itself to analytics, you know, as much as a sport like baseball would, because there's a lot of ebbs and flows in football. One play changes everything, and you could throw the analytics out the window. So to me, I think Staley needs to answer some questions and really get this situation under control, because you cannot do this.
Well, the Chargers are going to have to ramp up their defensive side of the ball as well. I think the talent they have some talent in some spaces, but they really need some more up front to help out to Joey Bosa and to their secondary outside of Derwin James is questionable. So they really do need to add some defensive talent. And Staley was a defensive coordinator, so I also need him to do a better job at coaching them up, because man, oh man, they are not in right positions at the right time, and they just look lost too often. So the Chargers also probably kicking themselves for the loss to the Houston Texans, which just happened a couple weeks ago. So they don't lose to the Texans, they probably are in the playoffs. So the Chargers, they're always going to have this stick about them, this what if thing with them. Yep. And it is what it is now with them. And for the Raiders, congratulations, 10-7, unbelievable that we're still here with them. And this is a thing. So good for the Raiders. Happy for Carr and Rich Bisaccia and Max Crosby and the rest of the guys there. And that's the first game of next weekend, which we're going to get to the playoff bracket at some point. But it should be a good one for them. And the reason, Matt, that this game needed to end in a tie for both teams to make it is because of what happened earlier in the day. So let's talk about some of these games, if I can just find the box score for it really quickly. But the main real one, let's just get it out of the way. The Steelers hanging on and coming back and barely beating the Ravens in overtime.
This game sucked.
What's that?
This game sucked.
Yeah, this is a tough watch. No Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley back in this game. A couple of confusing TJ Watt moments where you thought he might have had the record and then he didn't have the record. And he had a couple of half sacks that they got taken back off penalties. So if you're watching this game only to see what TJ Watt did, he tied Michael Strahan's record after a sack got taken away and got called a tackle for loss. And then after a half a sack between him and Cam Hayward was taken away due to a penalty. So he gets one sack, a huge sack, by the way, that ended up being a forced fumble, I believe, of Tyler Huntley. And it's the Steelers in overtime. They win 16-13. They gave themselves a chance to be in it. So they won this game not knowing what their future held. If the Raiders and Chargers had tied, the Steelers would have been eliminated. But Big Ben gets to live to play another day because of what Brandon Staley did at the end of that game, because of what the Chargers defense was unable to do. So this was a very weird dynamic watching this, because they also needed more help in another game that we're going to talk about after this. But let's just talk about the Steelers. They are a tough watch, Matt Bushnell. We know this. We've said this all year long. They're 9-7-1. And somehow, some way, they have found themselves into the postseason. But in this game, Ben Roethlisberger, 30 of 44 for 244 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. Not bad numbers at the surface, but I really feel like he struggled mightily in this game because he's old and he can't move. And oftentimes his arm is inconsistent. So I don't really know what to make of the guy. But you had some big plays by Claypool and by Deontay Johnson late in this game that really got the Steelers down the field. And then the mix between it was Snell who got the bulk of the carries because of Harris. I think they just were managing his load. I'm not really 100% sure if he was injured, but they couldn't even get the ground game going as much as they would have liked to. But this game was so bad that it was 3-3 at halftime, and it went into overtime and still finished just 16-13. Matt, I don't know what else to say. The Ravens finished the season losing 6 in a row, and clearly too banged up, and tried to spoil the Steelers season, but ultimately it was not enough.
Yeah, I think when you took a look at this game, it was a hard watch for me, Randy. Like I tried to tune in, and then you see the score, and then you start watching Big Ben. It's a corpse out there playing quarterback. I think at one point he had 13 passes for 60 something yards, and it was just like it was bad. There's no arm strength there. There's no oomph there. You see, he got warmed up, but to me, the Ravens are just a ravaged unit. You watch this defense; they didn't have the bodies that they would have had, if not for all the injuries. So to me, it was hard to watch a team. The Ravens have some questions to answer in the offseason, but Pittsburgh, they made it in by the skin of their teeth because of, not the tie. The tie didn't happen. But this game just wasn't, I hate watching it. I tuned into parts of it and then I just turned it off because I turned it into overtime and I'm like, Jesus Christ, they're going to make the playoffs. And lo and behold, they do, but they draw the Chiefs, and it's getting dark fast, as they would say, for Pittsburgh. So I don't have much to say. Big Ben goes out, makes the playoffs this year. I don't know how else you can end this career. They're not winning the Super Bowl, so let's not get confused with that. So looks like they're one and done in the playoffs, in my opinion, and we'll get to that later. But I don't know, Randy, just luck, lucky bastards.
Yeah, this game was horrible to watch. All you need to know is that the Steelers won and that they took care of what they needed to take care of. But while that game is going on, they needed massive amounts of help from the team with the number 1 overall pick in the draft. So you're thinking, well, we're screwed anyway. It's not going to happen for us. And, good season, way to go, Ben. Great career. But then, no, Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars decided, we're going to throw you guys a bone. We're going to play the best game of our season against the hated Colts. And all the Colts had to do was win it in, and the Steelers essentially were done. But no, the Jags, Trevor Lawrence started this game 12 of 12, I believe, by far the best games ever played. He went 23 of 32, 223 yards. 2 touchdowns, no picks. This is what I was talking about with Trevor Lawrence. This is what we needed to see. And the Colts clearly did not look like they wanted to be there. They laid an absolute egg with their season on the line, and it starts and ends to me with the quarterback. Carson Wentz, 17 of 29, 185 yards, a touchdown and a pick. The Jags' focus was clearly on Jonathan Taylor, who had 15 for 77. And then you don't have a quarterback who can make a play to get you back into this game. I'm very disappointed because I thought the Colts were going to be a team that were going to be very difficult to play in the playoffs, and now they find themselves not there. Matt, stunner of the weekend. I said I thought the Jags might cover. I didn't have any sense to think that they were actually going to win this game.
And what a way for the rookie quarterback class, to end the regular season with Trevor Lawrence looking like the best rookie on the field. Like Trevor Lawrence really shut up, and now you start feeling good about going into 2022 season with Trevor Lawrence. Like you wanted to see this game and they got it. So that feels good about it. If you're the Colts, your first pick is going to Philly, and you had to watch your quarterback out there throw up a QBR of 4.4. And for those who do not know, the QBR rating, the scale goes from 100 being the best, 50 is average. So like your barometer to be an average NFL quarterback is 50. Carson Wentz was a 4.4 in the biggest game of their year. And it feels like to me, Randy, every big game that Carson Wentz had to win, they didn't win. Yep. Like he wasn't the reason. It was Jonathan Taylor. And as a man, I give props to Jacksonville's defense because they shut Jonathan Taylor down. Mm-hmm. They said, you are not going to be the guy to beat us. We're not going to let you in the end zone. So I do have to give a lot of credit to Jacksonville's defense. Bravo, what they were able to do against the Colts. But man, when you need a win and you start seeing who's the guys that you need, Carson Wentz has never been that dude. Without Nick Foles, I don't think they win that Super Bowl. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Carson Wentz wins that Super Bowl. I
They
think
might not make it there. I don't think they make it there.
exactly. It takes a special player under the toughest of circumstances and a guy named Big Thick Nick to get the job done. And he got it done. And Carson Wentz couldn't get it done today. He couldn't get it done in other games. And it's been the Jonathan Taylor show. And this team desperately needs a superstar quarterback if they're ever going to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and Frank Reich said today that they will not commit to Carson Wentz in the 2022 season. So we'll see what happens in Indianapolis. But you got to have a bad taste in your mouth because he gets COVID, misses a whole week of practice, gets cleared the day of, loses at home to the Raiders, which makes this a must-win game. And then all the pressure on the Colts, ultimately not enough. And, maybe you don't lose both games to the Titans next time. Maybe you win a big game at home against the Bucs. You have to win games throughout the year to put yourself in situations to avoid this. And even when you are in this situation, the Jags coming into this game are 2-14. You can't lose to the 2-14 Jags with your season on the line. You just can't do it. It's not okay, not acceptable. And the Colts, this is why they started 1-5, right? I mean, this is kind of who they were, and they were capable of beating a lot of teams. They're also capable of losing to a lot of teams, and here they are, watching the postseason like the rest of us. Now, that's the AFC, right? All the playoff, all of the playoff spots have been determined in the AFC.
Yep.
Just one up for grabs in the NFC, Matt Bushnell. This is where our friend Henry is going to like this segment because you had the Rams versus the Niners. If the Niners won, they were in. And if they didn't win, and the Saints had a chance to get in, those are really the only two teams with the chance to make the postseason. The Saints won. Okay, so they're hoping that the Rams really care about their seeding and win. So the Rams at one point up, I believe, 10 in this game over the Niners, but ultimately was not enough because Jimmy G had a legacy drive in the fourth quarter and in overtime. I could not believe my eyes when I watched this, but I think they were down a touchdown, and Jimmy Garoppolo drives down the field and he hits Debo, he hits Brandon Ayuk, and then eventually they score the touchdown to tie the game to force overtime. And then in overtime, Garoppolo leads a field goal drive for the win. And then Stafford, I think, was picked off to end this game, right? Do I remember this correctly? I feel like I should know these details.
Yeah,
so
he was picked off.
The Niners have won 6 in a row over the Rams and have clinched the NFC playoff spot that they were hoping for. I had doubts about this game, but as soon as this game totally shifted, it has nothing to do really with McVay, but McVay at one point went into the end zone to celebrate a Tyler Higbee touchdown. And at that point on, it was all Niners. I think they outscored the Rams 24-3 at some point after that. So, good for the Niners. Like, I'd rather have the Niners in the postseason than the Saints. They're much more watchable, much more entertaining, and they get a good matchup next weekend as well. But I think the Niners could make some noise here in the playoffs. They run the ball really well. Mitchell's had a great year. They have playmakers, Ayuk, Debo, who I have been critical of, but he's just an overall playmaker. He had 8 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown in this game, and then added 4 catches for 95 yards. So however way you get the ball in his hands, he seems to make plays. So that's great. And then obviously, me, I'm a Kittle guy. Kittle, this game goes as far as Kittle takes them, who I don't think played too well in this game, but ultimately it was good enough for the Niners to get the job done. We're getting San Fran in the playoffs after all at 10-7, Matt Bushnell.
Yeah, well, and Debo also threw a touchdown pass. So
I guess I forgot that. You're right.
Yep. So, I mean, Debo did it all this game. He did everything he could possibly do to win this game for the 49ers, more so than Jimmy G, in my personal opinion. Juwan Jennings, really a nice showing out of him, a guy that runs physical, runs really nice, crisp routes. So you got to feel pretty good if you're a 49ers fan going into this week. They get Dallas, which for me is an absolute treat. But I just have to go back and I take a look at the Rams, and Matthew Stafford does what Matthew Stafford does all the time. And that is when it comes to making a big moment, he just always shrinks. He's never that guy. In quarters 1 through 3, I'll say fantastic, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But when it comes time, when it's crunch time, it's like, where are you, Matthew? And he's not there. So that bothers me. And the Rams, to me, are just like a lot of bravado. I don't see a lot of substance behind it. They're a good football team. Everyone thinks they're great. But at some point, I'm tired of the talk about this team, Randy. I'm just tired of it. I want to see Aaron Donald. I know he's double and triple teamed, but if that's the best that we're going to get from Aaron Donald, I don't think this team goes very far. Donald's got to get some sacks because obviously Floyd is not good enough to get pressure on his own. You can pretty much neutralize Jalen Ramsey if you just avoid him. So to me, there's a lot of things with this Rams team that I do not love. And Cam Akers came back, so that was nice for this team. But man, just the force feeding of OBJ, not saying it's his fault, but you got to play within the offense if you're Matthew Stafford. It's a Matthew Stafford issue, not an OBJ issue. When you start trying to force the issue here, take what the defense gives you sometimes. And some of these quarterbacks fall in love with their arm way too much. And then that's when you start running into trouble. As far as the 49ers go, hat tip to Kyle Shanahan for really righting the ship, because this team was left for dead 7 weeks ago. Then they get that big win against the Bears, and now they start going on a streak. And it all started with Debo. And then you take a look at that defense. That defense really showed up to really limit the Rams in that second half. Being down by the points that they were, Sean McVay celebrating, I think it's stuck in their craw a little bit, and you have to be happy with them. So to me, I think it's two teams heading in different directions. Now the Rams got an interesting matchup. So do the 49ers. So I'm interested to see how the next week plays out.
I actually kind of do blame Odell a little bit in this game, only because the one interception where Stafford just chucked it down the field, I don't blame him for. But I expect him to compete a little bit more for that ball. I want you out there. You're an elite guy, in my opinion. So therefore, you should be able to make these plays when it's not exactly perfect. When you're an elite receiver, you make things happen, make it easier for your quarterback. And for me, he didn't do that in this situation. So a little bit of criticism for Odell on his part, but for the most part, yes, Stafford has to play better overall. So the Rams, ultimately, it didn't matter too much. They still make the playoffs, and they still it was just a seeding game for them. It would have been nice to knock out your rival, I would say. But now the playoffs are set, Matt Bushnell. If you allow me to share my screen, I don't think.
My apologies.
If you give me permission, I will share the playoff bracket for you. Super wild card weekend.
All right, feel free.
All right, let's do it. It's been a while since we've showed you some graphics. Here you go. I have the Super Wildcard Weekend on tap for us, which I'll share this more on our Thursday show when we make our predictions and we go through the gambling lines and everything like that. But this is it. The regular season officially done. We don't have to talk about our crappy teams anymore. And these are all the teams with a chance to make the Super Bowl, Matt. Now, we're going to preview, obviously, all of this on our Thursday show. But just looking at the lineup here for this upcoming Super Wildcard Weekend, what intrigues you the most?
I want to see Pats and Bills again. All these matchups really intrigue me a lot for various different reasons, and all of them have great storylines. So, I like all of them, Randy. I want to watch all these games because you get the Raiders at the Bengals. You have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase going against Derek Carr, the improbable Raiders. And with John Madden passing away this year, it just almost feels like it's poetic that this is what the Raiders have to go through to get to the mountaintop. I'm not saying that they will, but I'm excited. I'm pumped for that one. And then we get Pats and Bills on the same day. I love that. Thank you so much for this Saturday, which is going to feature great games. Pats, Bills, rivalry built in there. And then you get the Eagles versus the Buccaneers. The last team to beat Brady in the Super Bowl was the Eagles. So you got a revenge factor in here. This is going to be a great game. And anybody that knows the history of football knows the rivalry of the 49ers and the Cowboys from the late to, I should say, the early to mid 80s-ish and the early 90s, where these teams constantly squared off. It was always America's game of the week. Fantastic matchup. And now we get to see this again when both teams are good. I am so looking forward to it. And it's, of course, on the Nickelodeon. So someone's going to get slimed in the end zone. And Mitch Trubisky will have to hand over his trophy of the MVP.
The MVP.
The MVP. That's right.
The Nickelodeon valuable player.
And then Pittsburgh's and Chiefs. This game I'm not looking forward to at all because I think it's going to be a bloodbath. Chiefs up, but it's a nice way to finish your Sunday with a blowout. Go to bed a little bit early after you catch the first half. It should be like 100-0 by then. So look forward to that one. And then we get Cardinals Rams, a divisional matchup. Can the Cardinals buck McVay? Can they do this? Is this the year for the Cardinals? Can McVay show that he can have success? Can they get off this snide that they're on? Are they a better team? So I'm just thrilled with all these matchups.
Yeah, I'm noticing this must have been the NBC graphic before Sunday night because it still has Vegas or the Chargers on here and potentially Pittsburgh. But we know the matchups now. It will be Vegas at Cincy, and it will be the Patriots at the Bills, and it will be the Steelers at the Chiefs. Now, I'm looking at the Steelers at the Chiefs to be the game I'm most interested in betting because, I don't know if you noticed, the mobile sports gambling is now illegal in New York State. So I'm looking at for the team that I'm just all in on, and it's the Chiefs this week. We just saw them demolish the Steelers a couple weeks ago. I expect more of the same in Arrowhead. And, you always win these wildcard weekends, I try to locate the weak spot. For years, it was Andy Dalton. Like, where's Andy Dalton playing? Who are the Bengals playing? You knew that you weren't going to bet on them. You could bet against them. This year, it's the Steelers. It has been Roethlisberger. Love that. I'm a sucker for all-time uniform matchups. The Niners and Cowboys, classic. I love it. The only thing that sucks that we'll be on Nickelodeon. Hey, I liked that broadcast last year. It was entertaining for a traditional matchup like this one. I would like it to be on a regular broadcast, but
it's on CBS. It's on CBS.
Oh, it is on CBS. Okay, so it's small. Gotcha. Got it. I don't have to watch on Nickelodeon, then. That's good. But the kids, I'm sure, will enjoy it. They'll get a nice history lesson in the name of football. So really looking forward to this, and we're going to break down all of these games on our Thursday show. As I said, we're going to give you the lines. We're going to preview each individual matchup. Very much excited for that. I can't believe it's finally here, Matt Bushnell. Super Wildcard Weekend, one of the best weekends of the year. Who's not looking forward to this is my fiance, whose birthday is on Sunday. We might be stuck watching football all day, just saying. Anyway, that's the matchups, man. I can't wait to preview those with you on Thursday. And I'll get the right graphic up that has the right matchups when I do that, just because, we're all about staying up to date here on the show. But before we get into, we were going to do awards, but Matt, you pointed out I'm a bad rundown maker, and we had news to talk about, and we're happy all the playoffs are set and all of this. That's great, but these teams that did not make the postseason are making wholesale changes. So we need to talk about some coaches and GMs that have been fired. Now, to this point, there are some not so surprises and there are some surprises. Obviously, John Gruden was resigned in the middle of the season. Urban Meyer was fired in the middle of the season. But on Black Monday/Sunday, there have been changes because the Broncos played Saturday. It came out that they were removing Vic Fangio from his head coach job with the Denver Broncos. And then after their game Sunday, I think, or maybe early Monday, it came out the Vikings were firing both of their general manager and head coach Mike Zimmer. And then the same thing came out for your Chicago Bears, who are firing Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, the general manager. In Giants world, who, not so surprising news, Dave Gettleman finally out of my life. He announced that he would be retiring. I hate that he was even given the option. He should have been fired a month ago. And more surprising news, it appears Joe Judge has a job, and the Giants GM search is basically narrowed down to people who want to work with Joe Judge. Totally hate that decision, but we can talk about that another time. But the most shocking one of yesterday, Matt Bushnell, was that the Miami Dolphins have fired Brian Flores, who has been a great coach for them, obviously barely missing the playoffs each of the last 2 seasons. But he has a winning record 3 years in. He took a Miami team that was totally just a disaster, made them go 5-11. Then it was 10-6 last year, and then it was 9-8 this year. I don't understand this move. Maybe the Dolphins have just come so used to firing a coach every 3 years that they're just firing this one, even though he's a good one. Doesn't make any sense to me. Matt, so your thoughts on the Flores decision and the rest of the transactions that happened yesterday?
Yeah, so I was listening to Florio a little bit yesterday and today. And Mike Florio is a great source. He has a lot of connections within the NFL, and apparently with the Dolphins, and you start digging in. So yesterday, a story came out that Brian Flores was hard to deal with, had the most assistant coaching turnover in the NFL, really didn't get along with Tua and that, the quarterback room in itself. But then you hear Florio talk about that Stephen Ross is an absentee owner, and this was basically a hit job by the president and by the GM. they didn't want Brian Flores there anymore. Even though the product on the field was, building to it, the roster wasn't fantastic. The quarterback room wasn't great. Um, they went over his head. Brian Flores originally wanted Justin Herbert. The owner and all of them decided, well, we're going to go Tua. We want Tua. So that's the route that they went. So there was some disagreements there, and it just bubbled to the surface. And now they're trying to slander Brian Flores at this point, which I think is completely ridiculous at this point. That guy is a great coach. Beating Bill Belichick once every year, sign me up for that, because that dude can flat out coach his ass off. So to me, that is a huge, huge mistake on the Dolphins' part. Also listening to Florio about Joe Judge's situation in New York. It really is confusing that they let Dave Gettleman retire. Essentially, they didn't want to fire him. And Florio's hearing through a lot of league circles that it's not about that the Giants want or don't want to keep these guys, is that they don't want to be the ones to fire them. They don't want to have that on their hands. And they really like Joe Judge. So right now with the Giants GM search, they are looking for guys, and anyone that says they do not want Joe Judge would no longer be considered for the GM job. So that's what's going on in league circles. Joe Judge is more than expected to stay with the Giants next year. When it comes to the Chicago Bears, Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, I think we kind of expected it. We talked about during the draft show, how the hell you let them move draft capital to get up to Justin Fields. And look, I think we have a lot of questions about Justin Fields, justifiably so, but he still makes Chicago, along with being a charter franchise, an attractive job. And the fact that they, to get the best possible head coach, you almost had to fire Ryan Pace. They are talking to a lot of guys. Brian Flores is going to Chicago, and he will be interviewing with them in the next day or two. Now, keep in mind what the Bears have been doing, and this is pure speculation, what I'm seeing on Twitter, is that they are doing a lot of Zoom interviews with everybody. Flores is getting an in-person interview. So to me, that looks extremely promising. I love that. But the Bears are casting a wide net. Right now, I believe the GM search is up to 7 candidates. The head coaching search is, I believe, at 13 or 14 now. So they have a lot of requests out there. They have a lot of interviews set up. So they're moving along with that. So I'm not surprised with that. Denver and Fangio, I think we saw it coming, Randy. It's a really good roster outside of the quarterback position. And if you can land a guy like Deshaun Watson, maybe that makes it more appealing. But to me, this is a good job if you find the right guy. I don't think we were surprised by it. And someone's going to get them a hell of a defensive coordinator in Fangio. I think he's one of the best in the business. Then we move on to Minnesota. Shocked by Rick Spielman getting fired. Not shocked by Mike Zimmer. I think you saw the Vikings. I think that was needed. But Rick Spielman was kind of shocking. So I think some of these were expected. Some of them not so much.
Matt Nagy's going to get a job as an offensive coordinator somewhere. Would not shock me if it's for the Giants, who have been just an absolute joke offensively for the last 6 weeks, really all season, but for another level of incompetent for the last 6 weeks. My issue with the Giants situation is pretty much the same issue I had before, is that they don't want to appear dysfunctional. Well, why don't you read a paper or watch your football team because you're dysfunctional. Just accept it at this point. They're making the same mistake they made before that they made with Eli. Basically, we're moving on from Jerry Reese and the head coach, but we're only going to bring in a GM and a head coach that wants to work with Eli Manning. Now you're doing the same thing with Joe Judge. It's a big mistake. This guy is unhinged. He is clearly in over his head. I can't believe you're giving him another opportunity. Now, if they somehow hire a GM and they fire Joe Judge, that's great. But even then, you're still putting yourself behind the 8 ball when all of these head coaching candidates are out there right now. All of them are going to have a job. Right now, we're looking at the Dolphins, the Bears, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Jags, maybe the Raiders. But if you say Rich Bisaccia should be back, then, maybe not the Raiders. But still, Brian Flores should be getting an interview. The fact that the Panthers and Giants are just sitting there with their garbage head coaches while Brian Flores is out there is a joke. What has Matt Rule and Joe Judge done to warrant a job over Brian Flores? It's not possible. The other thing, the elephant in the room, Matt, that we haven't touched on, is that when the Dolphins fired Flores yesterday, all the rumors came out. Said Stephen Ross is a huge booster for the Michigan football program.
Yep.
Now that they're immediately ties to Jim Harbaugh, perhaps he'd be interested in Miami or coming back to the NFL as a whole. Since that, we've seen that maybe Harbaugh is getting a raise to stay in Michigan for life, right? He's probably not coming back to the NFL.
Yeah, everything that I've been hearing is that Harbaugh is only talking to one team at the current time, and that's the Bears. That hasn't been confirmed by anybody reliable, but some insiders on the Bears who have gotten things right in the past quite a bit have said that Harbaugh is definitely talking with the Bears. But more, it's like angling from Michigan. He talked to Michigan yesterday. This was confirmed by, I believe, Tom Pelissero. I'll have to double check that. But Harbaugh was talking to Michigan yesterday about a contract extension and to get more money. Now, I'm not sure that's going to be used as leverage to get the best deal possible. But from my perspective, if I'm Harbaugh, all right, you have the Bears out there, and it's like, do you really want to work under that ownership group with that disastrous of a press conference last year? Let's say the Giants job opens up for whatever reason. Do you really want to work under that situation? Whereas you work in Michigan right now, you have stability. You're basically your own boss. You run the show at Michigan, and you're going to get paid a lot of money, and you probably have a job for as long as you want it. Now, I know we're going to talk about the national title game last night, Randy, but here's the other side of the coin. Michigan is not going to be what Georgia was this year. No. Michigan is probably not going to be what Alabama is on their best years. You just can't do that. So you have to look at it like, as a competitor, it would probably make more sense for Harbaugh to go to the NFL because he's going to have a better chance to win a championship. College football, I don't see Michigan ever winning a national championship. Not after what I witnessed last night, because that was a different kind of football that I was watching. And Michigan just will never be on that level. Again, it's over with. All the years of past of how great Michigan used to be, it's done. Big Ten, maybe. You might be able to win a couple of Big Ten titles. So now it's just like, what is Harbaugh going to do? And he's going to get paid a lot of money to go in the NFL if that's what he wants. And this is the interesting connection. Harbaugh's really close with Jeff Ireland. Jeff Ireland's interviewing for the Bears GM job. Mm-hmm. But I would not be shocked, and I'm just saying this, there's a slim possibility the Bears end up with Jeff Ireland and Jim Harbaugh.
Look, I expected Harbaugh to jump after they beat Ohio State, because to me, that was his goal. He finally did it. He made the playoff. No matter what happened in the playoff, to me, he could say, you know what, I beat Ohio State. I'm not going to win a national championship, as you just laid out. Time for me to jump, because that's the peak, is beating Ohio State. I know it took longer than he probably would have imagined, but you could see the difference, and we'll talk about the national championship game in just a little bit. But Georgia and Alabama and the rest of the ACC are not going anywhere, and I don't see how Michigan can beat any of those teams. So I actually do think Harbaugh will come back to the NFL, and if it's not this year, it will be eventually. But I think this year is a great chance for it, given the fact that he is a Bear and he has ties, and that's an attractive job. Now, quick, Matt, before we move on, do you want to do a quick ranking of the available openings for head coach GMs? Because I find it interesting that there's a bunch of openings, but we never talk about what's the sexiest spot. So the Raiders, I find very intriguing if they are truly an opening, because they're in Las Vegas. They have a great new stadium. They have a quarterback, so that would be great if you have a head coach. But so first, okay, let's do head coach, the teams with the head coach opening first, and then the GM opening, because I think they're different rankings for different reasons. So head coach rankings so you want to go from worst to best, or you want to go from best to worst?
Let's go from best to worst, because I'm gonna have to work through some of this.
Yes. So I'm looking at this. I think the best situation is the playoff team, the Raiders. I just think that they have a good core. Obviously, they've had success despite their shortcomings. And I do think having the quarterback means everything. When you look at this list, Matt, who's the best one for you?
I'm with you, Randy, and it would be a travesty for Bisaccia to lose his job. I don't think he did anything to warrant losing his job. I think he should keep it. But if that job does open, it is the best job on the market.
Yeah, I think we both agree that Bisaccia deserves an opportunity, but if he doesn't, they don't bring him back, I think the Raiders are at the top of the list. Number two is where I start to not really know where to go with here, because there's a lot of flaws in a lot of these other openings. But just based on I don't even know really where to go, because I think the main reason I liked the Dolphins so much was their head coach. So I don't think I like him as much without him. So, you know what? I'm going to say the other best situation is the Vikings, because I think they have a ton of talent already. And I think their division, if Rodgers were to leave, could be one that's winnable for them in the immediate future.
Number two, I'm going to be a bit of a homer here, but I'll give reasons why. I'm going to take the Bears as number two. And the reason why I'm doing it is, in theory, if Rodgers leaves the division, Justin Fields could be the best quarterback in that division if he's developed correctly and he reaches that ceiling that, is so high. The second reason is, we saw how teams win championships, right? Mm-hmm. Either you get to the quarterback, or you protect the quarterback and you throw a lot. Having Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn on as your bookend pass rushers with Roquan Smith in the middle, you get a guy like a Brian Flores or a defensive-minded head coach. The defense is pretty much already built there for you. The defense played pretty well. We saw what they did against the Giants. They really held their own against Minnesota for a long time. I think pass rushing and defense can get you to 500 pretty quickly. The Bears are closer to 500. My issue with the Vikings is that you have Kirk Cousins at quarterback. He had an all-time year, but there's limitations. That defensive line is not good. You can't get pressure with the front four. You have to bring added pressure. And that secondary outside of Harrison Smith is not good. You have Justin Jefferson, you have Dalvin Cook, and Adam Thielen. And those are three really, really great players. But when this team has to win it all, they fall off a lot. So that's why I put the Bears slightly ahead of the Vikings.
So are we flip-flopping here? Because I'll say Bears are 3. Are you going to say Vikings are 3?
Yeah, I'll say the Vikings at 3.
Yeah, I echo what you say about the Bears. The best defense probably on this list. Young quarterback that obviously needs to be coached up, but needs an offense that he can run. He can't have a guy not really committing to him and saying the backup is better. You need someone to fully embrace what you have in Justin Fields. So similar thing. If Rodgers leads the division, it would not shock me if the Bears were to win, and especially if Fields is coached correctly, the Bears could be there with a quick turnaround. All right, so then 4 for me. I'm just going to say the Jags because I think the Jags, they have number 1 pick in the draft. They have the number 1 pick at quarterback from the year before. They have some talent on defense. They have some talent on offense too, if they could get healthier overall. I think the prospect of the quarterback is still worth the investment. So I will say the Jags are 4 for me. And then their division is not that good. The Texans are mess. The Titans, obviously, are the 1 seed in the AFC, but I think that's more conference than it is the Titans. And the Colts are just Colts. I don't think you just beat them. They don't strike fear into anyone like what they should, especially as long as they have Carson Wentz. So ultimately, it's a winnable division if you have the right people around Trevor Lawrence, and he's coached up the right way.
Yeah, this part is really where it becomes murky to me as well, because I think, Henry had the Trent Baalke experience in San Francisco, and that guy is a walking disaster. And then Shad Khan, who's so involved, is basically the definition of a meddling owner, has no football background and sticks his nose in a lot of business. But Trevor Lawrence makes it damn appealing. But I'm going to go with the team that's got a lot in the cupboard, and they are in a pretty good place. I'm going with the Broncos here. I think Denver's a really good spot. The biggest thing is the quarterback. That's what they're missing. When you can step in there and you have Javonte, the running back, Williams, Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant. Their offensive line is good. Their defense needs some work, I think. The secondary is pretty good. I love Patrick Surtain. I thought he had a really fabulous rookie year.
Great year.
Yeah, and the Broncos have a lot to offer, but you got to get that quarterback. And what are you going to have to give up to get that quarterback? But if you get a guy like Deshaun Watson, this is the best job. This jumps from 4 to 1 by a mile.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, the Broncos have to get the quarterback. And it's a weak quarterback draft. I don't know if they're going to be able to get it. But if they get Watson, I'm taking everyone down, and Broncos are going number 1.
Well, that brings me to 6 for me, which is the Broncos. And it's less about the Broncos situation itself, which I do think they have talent. But it's also the John Elway aspect of things. Like, he has shown that he's not a great general manager, and that if you might be stuck with a bad quarterback in this spot. So that might be because, honestly, Fangio had a good defense, and then he had a winning record each of the years. But the other aspect of this that I don't like the Broncos for is that, look around. You have Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr all in your division, all better than you, and all might be a lot better than you for the next 5 years. So your competition, and I know these people are competitors, and they're not going to just let these teams be better necessarily, but I look around the room and I go, wow, I don't really have a lot of opportunities to win the division, and I might be stuck in a wild card hunt for a while here. So if you get Deshaun Watson, that changes that, obviously, but as currently constructed, I don't love the Broncos job as much as you do.
So what if you have a handshake agreement in place? So if you get Brian Flores, or let's just say, put Deshaun Watson on the Broncos right now, where does that job rank for you?
Oh, it's 1.
Yeah, because Watson might be the best quarterback in that division. I know we talk about Mahomes, but I have Watson ahead of Justin Herbert currently. I think Justin Herbert, with Watson being out, it kind of hurts. But just based off what Watson's done, I think Watson's a superstar, mega quarterback, and makes that job very appealing. So I guess it's my next opening, and I guess I'm going to go Miami with all the drama that's happened, and you fired a good coach that should have never been fired in the first place. I think they were trending in the right direction. I like Miami a lot. So I'll put Miami there. I don't love a lot. I think the defense was made better by Flores. Offensively, they have some stuff there, but I just don't think it's a great job at this point if you have to deal with that GM and that owner at this point.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why the Dolphins are the least attractive head coach job to me, because I think they were very well coached. And I think that the main reason that they were so competitive and they were able to start 1-7 and then win 7 in a row and then have a chance at the playoffs was because they had Brian Flores. Because when he had Jacoby Brissett starting 4 games for them in the middle of the season, he didn't give up, and he didn't let his players give up, and they fought for him. And I think that matters. They have a good secondary, yes, but they have a Jalen Waddle, who I absolutely love. But is Tua really that good? I think he's kind of mid. I just think he's very average quarterback in the NFL. I don't think they have a ton of outstanding talent. I think a lot of it was coached up by Brian Flores. So the Dolphins also have to deal with the Buffalo Bills. They also have to deal with the New England Patriots, the New York Jets, who as far as I'm concerned, are in a good spot to develop and get better next year because they have 2 first-round picks. They have a lot of draft capital. Their young players played decent for them this year. I wouldn't necessarily just think that the Dolphins are going to be better than them next year. So I really don't like the spot the Dolphins are in right now. And if you're a coach who wants more than 3 years of job security, how can you be so sure that you're going to get it there in Miami when you do it? If you did a good job as Flores and you kept your job, congratulations. But I don't have any belief that that's actually going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, my last place team is the Jags. And I think Trevor Lawrence makes the job very attractive for a lot of different reasons. But once again, you're dealing with guys like Trent Baalke and Shad Khan, who I just cannot wrap my arms around. It's great that you get to work with Trevor Lawrence, but what else do you have there? I mean, there are some pieces there if you like James Robinson and Chenault Jr. and I forget the other guy. But to me, this job is just kind of You get the first overall pick. You're probably going to get a pass rusher. Because that's the position of need right now, or you can trade it down and get a crap load of picks if someone's willing to trade up. But, Randy, that's the problem with this draft. There's not that quarterback out there that makes you think, my God, I got to move up and I got to get this quarterback. It's maybe Matt Corral. I don't know. I just don't love this draft for quarterbacks. I think there's a lot to be desired. So that kind of hurts Jacksonville. It's always great to have the number 1 pick, but, it's probably going to be Thibodeau or Hutchinson.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, Jacksonville have no established culture of success there. So I think you come in there, you have that sort of expectation on you. So it'll be interesting to see how that works there. Now GMs go, Matt. It's the Giants, it's the Vikings, and who else am I missing here? The Bears. Those 3, right? That's it?
Yep.
All right, well, I'm going to tell you who's in dead last. It's the New York Giants.
Yeah.
Any sucker who takes this job, willing to commit to Joe Judge, is an idiot. Yeah, you have 2 first-round picks, but somehow the Giants have made 2 top 10 picks unattractive. Congratulations to you. You truly did the unthinkable. The Giants are bottom 5 in cap space. I think maybe bottom 3 in cap space, coming off 4-13 season, an average quarterback, a bad offensive line, a bad defensive line, and overall overpaid and bad roster. And if you're committing to a guy who ran QB sneaks inside of his own 5-yard line to create more space to punt, you're an idiot. This guy needs to be fired. I hope there's another coaching opening at the very least at MetLife Stadium. And maybe I think there could be one in Seattle. We'll see what happens there. We haven't really heard much from out there. But Giants by far the worst general manager opening.
Yeah, I'm with you. When you're basically telling your next GM that they got to keep Joe Judge, why the hell do you want that job to begin with?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing about this job. Or even like we talked about in our group chat the other day, Randy, like even if you're told, hey, do whatever you want with the head coach. Why do I want to step in a situation where my first task is making a decision on the head coach?
Right.
Unless it's hiring the head coach. I don't want to go in there and fire a guy as my first official duty. Do it yourself. Clean up your own damn mess. Yeah, so to me, right. It's a problem. And I wouldn't want the job. And like you said, for a lot of reasons, a roster void of talent, the quarterback situation's not solved. The offensive line, you got a couple of players there that might be okay. The defense has got try hard guys, but, not a guy where I'm like, oh my God. And then you got that Leonard Williams contract you got to deal with. I mean, it's just, it's a lot. I wouldn't want to go in there and do that.
This reminds me, and I'm not going to get political, but if a president in the past left this country in a terrible situation and you get elected president, your first 4 years is basically damage control for the guy before you can really even do anything that you have plans to do. Yeah. Now this is you're coming in after Hurricane Gettleman. You have to clean up so much of a mess, and your owners aren't even willing to give you the supplies to clean it all up. This is a terrible situation. I would never ever want to be that. They don't want that job. And they're casting a wide net because they want someone to agree to it, but it would not shock me if Kevin Abrams eventually is just here, take the job because you'll deal with Judge. Yep. Whatever. Number 2, Minnesota Vikings. You're coming in fresh. You can hire a new head coach. The team has a lot of talent. I don't like the Kirk Cousins aspect of this. Mainly, he makes a ton of guaranteed money, and he's not that good. And you still have some work to do overall with the roster construction. So by default, the Bears having a quarterback already in place makes them the most attractive job. And if they hire the right head coach, the Bears, a good Bears team, the Chicago is a great city, and when the Bears are good, it is getting lit up all over the place. So for me, by far, the Bears are the best GM opening.
Yeah, I agree with you with the Vikings too, because the Kirk Cousins contract is kind of like a noose around your neck at this point, because if you cut him or get rid of him, it's $35 million against the cap right there. And that's going to be hard to kind of deal with at that time, because it's like, okay, they talk about Russell Wilson. They talk about the cap availability is just not there. The numbers don't work. So, they drafted Kellen Mond, and now all of a sudden the previous head coach hated him, didn't play him over Sean Mannion. So there's some things there. And then the Bears. So we take a look at the Bears situation. They're right now, as it stands, they have about $41 million in cap space. They have a quarterback on a rookie deal. They have their pass rushers in place, and they can cut up, players that are probably going to get cut that would put them at about $64 million. Now you have to rebuild the wide receiver room because Allen Robinson's gone, and Darnell Mooney, he just had 1,000 yards. I think is a very good number 2. He's not a 1, but he's a really good number 2 that can help you. And your offensive line, you got to see if these tackles can play. But it goes back to the Vikings and Bears. I wouldn't be upset if someone flip-flopped them 1 and 2, because what your last head coach did was, we don't know what Justin Fields is yet. We have more questions after his rookie season than we did coming out of the draft. We don't know if these 2 rookie tackles can play, because Nagy refused to play Tevin Jenkins when he came back, and he had to get, back surgery, but he came back and he looked okay. Like, Thomas Graham Jr. was a practice squad player for them, and then he comes in on the Monday Night Football game against the Vikings and completely shuts down Justin Jefferson, and then we don't see him for the rest of the season. Like the head coach, Matt Nagy, for all the nice guy talk and everything, he left more questions than answers for the future of this roster. So as a GM, are you comfortable with all those question marks?
Yeah, it's fair. I will see what happens with the Vikings. I think they're in a weird spot.
Yes.
And it's not that I'm not giving any love to Cousins, but he is very much an average quarterback to me. He's not that special, and he makes a ton of money implying that he is. And I think if you swapped Carr, for example, for Cousins, you would feel so much better about the Vikings, because Carr dragged the Raiders to the playoffs, where Cousins couldn't take this Vikings team who had a playoff spot essentially sitting there for the taking, and then just lose instead. And how many times have we seen Cousins just lose games in prime time and in big games? Like, the guy just isn't that kind of guy. So he's fine regular season. He just makes too much money for my liking, and I wouldn't want to hitch my wagon to him if I had other options.
Perfect 500 quarterback.
Absolutely. I'm at Bushnell. I'm going to make a scheduling call on the fly here. We're going to save our regular season awards for Thursday's show, because we're running heavy and we got a whole other game we need to talk about. So the fans and those watching live around the audio, you're hearing some real life decision making happening on the fly. So congratulations, you're breaking the fourth wall here. And something you were expected to see today, you're going to see on Thursday instead. So you're going to want to stick around and join us then. So Matt, the playoffs are set. We're ready to rock. Can't wait for that. I can't wait to break it all down with you on Thursday. But another season wrapped up last night as the college football playoff national championship game. And it was in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium. It was a rematch of the SEC championship game where Alabama crushed Georgia. And we previewed this game, and we talked about what our thoughts about Georgia being, favored in this game. We did not like that necessarily. But Georgia proved us all wrong. The state of Georgia, congratulations. They did the unthinkable and beat Nick Saban, and the former assistant beat Nick Saban in a bowl game. It finally has happened. Georgia defeated Alabama last night, 33-18. In a game I think was a little bit closer than the score indicates. There was a late turnover for a touchdown. That interception that got returned with a minute left as Alabama was driving was an unbelievable play. How he got all the way back to the house, I don't really understand, but it was a great play. Alabama, they lost Mitchie in that first Georgia game, and in this game, Jameson Williams left with a knee injury, and eventually it caught up to them because those are two really good wide receivers who are going to play at the next level, and they did not have them. So Bryce Young kind of left out on an island on his own. He went 35-57, 369 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. And the guy I did not think was capable of doing it, it's Stetson Bennett, 17-26, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, and had the play of the day, I thought, when Alabama jumped off sides. He threw one up there to, I believe, Mitchell for a 40-yard touchdown. That was a huge play and a really smart one by Bennett. So, it was weird. I all day I didn't get the vibe that this was, hey, national championship. I'm usually much more excited. But overall, I thought this was a really good game, and it really came down to the very end.
Yeah, easily the 2 best teams in the country. I think this left little doubt. And the thing that this left me in shock, and I'll say this, Alabama, yes, they lost their top 2 wide receivers and they lost their top 2 cornerbacks. That they didn't have their best wide receiver and they didn't have their 2 top cornerbacks going into this game, and then losing Williams hurt. But my God, Randy, the speed in this game was otherworldly. Like, if you didn't know any better, it was like you're almost watching an NFL game.
Yeah.
Because what you saw in that Georgia defense, I mean, Davis, that dude, it looks like he's like 6'10", 400 pounds. Like, you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be in wrestling or something. Just a mammoth of a human being for Georgia. And that dude was moving. Like, you just see the speed and the size and everything. I'll say it right now. I think Georgia, they're going to have at least 8 of those players on defense play in the NFL, and they're probably going in the top 2 rounds. I would not be shocked if Georgia has 8 players on that defense going the top 2 rounds, because that defense is so damn good. The corners were like glue on those wide receivers. The defensive line was able to move the Alabama offensive line. Alabama had really no chance, I felt. Like, even I watched the game, even with the field goals, I'm just like, man, you got to score touchdowns. At some point, you got to be able to score touchdowns. And Alabama was never able to take advantage of those opportunities. So to me, I tip my cap to Georgia, man. The speed was different, and Bennett was just good enough to be able to get his guys the football. I wasn't wowed by him as at the quarterback position,
Yeah.
but he did enough. He did enough to get the team to win. But really, it was just that Georgia defense, and I really like Cook at the running back position. That guy can fly as well. So
Isn't that Dalvin Cook's cousin or something?
yeah, I
Little
think
brother?
it's his cousin, or I don't think it's his little brother. I thought it was his little brother, but I think it's his cousin
He looks
actually.
just like him.
He
They really,
does.
he runs very hard, and with the hair and everything, it looks just like him running the ball. So he'll probably play at the next level. And that's what I kind of realized watching this game, that they're clearly the two best teams in the country. And there are so many guys playing on Sundays in the future
Yeah.
on the field. And White being one of them, or Cook being another one of them. I really, Bowers, the tight end, is an absolute beast. He's going to play at the next level. And then the guy who sealed it, to me, Ringo, with the unbelievable pick six. And you could tell how much it meant to Georgia, because it had been 41 years since they won a national title. They can't slay the Alabama Nick Saban dragon here. And they finally did. You could see the emotion on Kirby Smart's face, and you could see it on Stetson Bennett's face. Like, you can't help but to be happy for all of those guys. And really, Saban, I even said it afterwards that he was proud of Kirby, because he knows how everything he had been through, and I think Saban might have an understanding of just how hard it is to beat him, or at least he probably should realize that. He shouldn't apologize for it, but at least he knows his status in this field that we're talking about here. But even on the Alabama side, Bryce Young is still probably going to be the best quarterback taken next year. We'll see what he does next year, but it's the first Alabama quarterback to ever win the Heisman. Brian Robinson looks like a really good running back who's probably going to play at the next level as well. Alabama is just like running back you, but it's not even fair to say, because they're you for everything. Every position they have, they play at the next level. Jameson Williams is going to be a good NFL player. Mitchie, who got hurt in the SEC championship game, is going to play in the NFL. But the best player in the team might be Will Anderson, who is an unbelievable defensive end who kept getting chipped, getting double, triple teamed. He is an absolute stud. It didn't even get to record a sack in this game, because he just got so much attention from Georgia that they couldn't even really make too many plays. So, man, these two teams are on other levels or otherworldly. SEC just seems to dominate college football over and over again. And I was just happy, because a lot of times, the national championship game and the playoff games, a lot of bowl games, honestly, I don't know what the percentage would be, are blowouts. This one was not a blowout. Alabama was driving for a chance to tie. Obviously, Georgia makes that unbelievable pick six, but this was a game to the very end. Georgia scores 20 points in the fourth quarter to win. And congratulations to the Bulldogs, because this was a great game, and certainly one I enjoyed watching.
Yeah, you take a look at all these teams, and when I took a look at this, the NIL stuff is going to change college football a little bit. And I know Saban was kind of butthurt about it and said it's going to change who dominates college football. Well, maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the players are going to dominate college football, as they should. But this goes back to our Jim Harbaugh point. And if you're coaching every other team in the league, in college football, whether you're Lincoln Riley at USC, whether you're, in the Big 12, and now Oklahoma and Texas are moving to the SEC, you have to change your evaluation of where these teams rank. Like, what is your expectation as an athletic director, as a school, as a booster? Because, like I go back to, we saw 20 to 24 NFL players in that game last night.
Mm-hmm.
And at least 15 to 20 of those guys are going to be day one or day two picks. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't imagine these guys not. I mean, Georgia's entire defense, I expect to go in the first two rounds. But it just goes to show the expectations have to change. And with Deion Sanders able to land all these 5- and 4-star recruits, which is awesome. I'm so pumped to see that at the HBCUs. That is fantastic. I think as a college and as a university, you have to reevaluate what success is. And are those coaches going to be okay with it? Because for a long time, Randy, for the past 12 years now, everyone's been getting their ass kicked routinely by Nick Saban at Alabama. And it's been okay, whatever. But it's the SEC. And I go back to it. It's time to reevaluate this and figure out what's the best way to go about it, because college football is just not college football. It's the SEC.
Yeah, we'll see what Lincoln Riley can do out there in USC, or you got your boy Caleb Williams to transfer out. So we'll see. I mean, certainly feels like the SEC just is all of college football at the moment. So we had to talk a ton of college football, but I felt like it was worth talking about it. That we're going to talk about a lot of these guys and the NFL on our show in the near future. So good for them. Great college football season. I thought I really enjoyed watching all the bowl games, and I wish some of them were better than they were. But hey, that's, with COVID and everything really affecting a lot of these things, you take it for what it is. I just enjoy watching football no matter what. All right, Matt Bushnell. So we're saving our award segment for Thursday. Full disclosure, it's going to be the awards. So, grab your popcorn. We're going to be giving them out, the regular season awards on Thursday ahead, and then we're going to preview the wild card weekend, the super wild card weekend that extends into Monday Night Football. So, Matt, before we come back Thursday, we're gonna evaluate ourselves, really determine the true outcomes of these games, decide what we're betting on, break down all the really just juicy matchups in all of those games. But our show just covers the football aspect of things. We have a whole other sport. We got the NBA in full swing here. Baseball might start talking soon. Who knows? But it's January, so things are kind of exciting in sports. But at the same time, for our Life Group podcasts, it's only busy for a couple of us at the moment, right?
Yeah, that is true. And I know Dong City, Vince Mercandetti, and Henry Maldonado Jr., aka Life Group difference right now, because, well, reasons not at his own fault. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, baseball, get it together.
Yeah, but I guess the owners and players are meeting on Thursday. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. So you might see a show by Vincent Henry, and I would be fascinated because we know the money's the big obstacle, but the other minute issues that I would love to see how baseball can fix. And, one's against the shift, one's for the shift. I hate the shift. Get rid of it. Bring back the left-handed hitter, please. And then absolutely, we have the Work Shoot Wrestling podcast with Jason Richmond and Corey Richmond and Jason Brooks. My apologies, gentlemen. I am not sure when they're going to be back on. I haven't seen a podcast from them come on in a little bit, but gentlemen, please hurry back. Wrestling is kind of getting towards that WrestleMania season.
Royal Rumble right around the corner.
Yeah. Woo, boy, time flies, Randy. Time flies. And then we have the Total Bases podcast with Felipe Milicio and Austin Sparrow talking about fantasy baseball and some baseball news in general. Check them out on Sunday mornings. So good baseball podcast. And then we got the Step Back podcast with Jacob Anthony Moses and Leon Tompkins and Basketball Life. I know both of them were really heartbroken by the Bulls' loss to the Mavericks the other night.
Devastated.
You get a mojo going. Everyone loves win streaks. They were on a 9-game win streak and it got broken, and especially Jacob, because I heard, Randy, through the grapevine, that Jacob has switched his allegiance from the New York Knicks to the Chicago Bulls.
Ooh.
Looking to confirm the story, but there's some rumors floating out. So,
wow.
Just got to double check with Jacob on that, and you know what? He finally accepted that Michael Jordan is the GOAT, the best of all time. Now he loves him. So we're happy for you, Jacob. Obviously, I'm just.
What a turn of events.
Yes, we should have Jacob on to discuss this turn of behaviors that he has experienced. But anyway, that's all we have, Randy.
All right. Well, look, we all very committed to these things, and hopefully you guys enjoy all of the content we're pushing out for you guys. And really, the groups have been really all like come on Facebook for these days. So I feel like hopefully other people are feeling that same way. Really develop a community of people who like to just chat about, whatever sport or pop culture and whatever. I mean, that's what these groups are for, is to chat about what's going on. So we greatly appreciate everyone being a part of them, being a part of this. So whoever watched us live on Facebook, we greatly appreciate all the interaction and watching us. We greatly appreciate your support. And whoever watched us on the YouTube only show or didn't want to look at our faces, which I totally understand that too, and wanted to just listen to us on the audio only platforms, we appreciate that. So wherever you may be, however you may be listening to us, thank you for making us just a small part of your day. And we hope you do it again on Thursday, where we're going to be previewing Super Wildcard Weekend. Matt Bushnell, any parting words for the audience?
Gentlemen and ladies, we always give you great information, but like Randy said, this show would not be what it is without you. So I just want to say thank you for a great regular season. It's been a blast, and I look forward to many, many more.
Amen, brother. All right. On behalf of Matt Bushnell, I'm Randy Hammond saying stay warm. We'll see you guys back here on Thursday.